Hello everyone and welcome. Yes, my name is Arrowfire and welcome back to yet another episode of Look Out and Shout. And I'm very pleased to say today we are reviewing, this way this time, Fanstoys FT18 Lupus, their version of a G1 Weirdwolf. Now, this is kind of famous in the Transformers world, the Masterpiece world, in that it's one of Fanstoys' earlier releases. And as such is very hard to find. So I will say this is a 2023 reissue. Fanstoys have heard people's outcries and they want a new run of this figure. So to get a hold of the original release, as the number suggests, FT18, we're working our way beyond 50 now, is that this is a sought after figure because it is, well, older, basically. But as such, we're back to the same old problem. And whilst I hate to keep bringing it up, it's been applicable in the last 2 or 3 videos. The price for this on the secondary market, I've seen well exceed £200. I've actually seen as high as £400. And I'll tell you now, it's not a £400 figure. And this is what people have said. Because it's an older figure, it has its limitations of older engineering. So the price of it is not representative of the quality of the figure. However nice it is, and it is, we'll get into that. Whilst I'm glad it's here, I get frustrated again that it's just a lot of money that outweighs its quality simply because it's rare. And okay, Transformers is not unique in that situation, but it again is a bit like, when you get it, it's good, but it's not that much money good. I just want to take a moment to thank the guys at primetimetoys.com for sending me this figure. Primetime Toys are based in the UK and are a toy distribution company who have some great Transformers, both third-party and official, but as well as other figures that are non-Transformer related. They have a great stock and supply, and they send out postage really quickly to you. Big thank you to the guys. If you go to the website and make a purchase, in your basket, you can enter a couple of codes to use. One of them, which is an older code of Welcome10 for a 10% discount on your first order. But you can also use another code, which is PowerUp10 for, again, 10% off your order using one of those codes whenever you make a purchase. And of course, I highly recommend them. They're a great bunch of guys. But the box itself is very, very nice. We've got the standard sort of artwork on the front and a couple of product shots on the back, but it's a bit limited. There's not loads of production shots that you would get elsewhere. Again, it's a 2023 issue, but was the original one 2016, 2015? It is one of the older releases. So, shall we have a look inside the box? Typical Fanstoys polystyrene, which also comes with inside. Here's collector's card with stats on the back, which you still can't read. Here's instructions, accessories, and a change of face. And that's a long and a short of it. Okay, let's have a look at the figure itself, shall we? And here he is in his robot mode. And damn if that does not look good straight out of the box. That's lovely. I was always a bit concerned getting this figure because of its age, in as much as it was one of the earlier releases from Fanstoys. This was deemed as maybe not the most advanced in their collection. It was just one of the most sought after. So, I will say this is the 2023 reissue. I am under the impression from watching videos such as Alexis from Transformers the Show, there is an adaptation of design in as much as paint goes, the chest, the head. We'll get into this a bit more, that there is a different type of paint being used here. But in terms of physical advancements, hardware and ratchets and the inner workings of the figure, I don't believe this to be an awful lot different. I don't know. I did not handle the original release. But I have heard that because of its age, it's maybe not got all the bells and whistles that some of the more modern Fanstoys figures have. But that, so far, has not come through with this figure. It's fun to hold. It's fun to mess with. It has that lovely Fanstoys quality to it when it's done right. It's got very good heft to it. It's almost too heavy, maybe. The die cast is incredibly weighty, but it's good to hold. The ratchets are good. Maybe there's a bit too much in stiffness, and I'll show you that a bit more, but to get it out of the box, to get it into your hand, I can't tell you how nice that yellow is. And even the green, the teal metallic green, That's lovely. The red as well on the face. There's a two-tone red for the visor and a softer one for the faceplate. So far, I have been very impressed with it. And again, this is what I liken a bit to Contact Shot, my previous review. Is so nice when it's a figure that you really want, you've wanted for so long, you got it, you didn't pay the crazy aftermarket prices for it, and when you get it, it's actually a good figure, at least so far. Let's get in for a closer look. So straight away, getting him in for a closer look, you can just see how there's characteristics here. It's a very unusual colour for a Decepticon, yellow. We do see it with the Predacons, we see it for Sinatwin as well, but it's not really what you would say is real Decepticon colours, but it just looks lovely. The head sculpt is lovely. It's the same with their Chomp, their Skull Cruncher, that kind of reflectiveness on the visor, but again a more muted one for the face. He comes with a couple of head accessories, but there is some tightness, like that's a bit tight to move. There's ratchets on the old, nice sounding ratchets, not too heavy, friction outward, elbow bends, but a little bit on the stiff side. Fingers are good. Probably the thumb is the most stiff of all, and you can rotate it. It's on a ball joint. Truth is, I don't want to. I can see that snapping, that thumb joint, if I turn it round. I've done it before to get it on the top side, but I just don't feel comfortable with doing so. Waist rotation on a ratchet, which is nice, and then up go the hip skirts for maybe not the heaviest ratchets out, but it will hold. Heavier ratchets on the knee for posability. Feel like that should be heavier on the waist rather than the knee. And a nice ankle tilt. So he will hold good poses. And again, it's all die cast on the feet, so he's got no issue standing whatsoever. Very, very nice. Even if it is an older figure, it doesn't scream ancient. It's got a lot of characteristic to it. A very nice one to have in your collection. So for accessories, he comes with a very nice and somewhat large rifle, gun, which he holds one-handed. I'll show you that in a second. He also comes with his sword, or sword, and the only thing I'd say about this is whilst this makes up the tail in bot mode, fresh out of the box, one thing you have to do is rotate the hilt around at the bottom. It actually comes out like that. I thought I had a misconstructed version, but it just rotates around. So this is what it's like holding a sword, but this is where I think I've got a bit of an issue with mine. I can't get the sword into his left hand. I don't know if it's a shallowness of the groove, but it doesn't want to sit, it just pops straight out. You could possibly put it in and close the fist, but it will be very loose, and it's going to be the same with the gun as well. So I can only fit the sword on his right hand. That could just be my copy. It's a bit of a shame that he won't be able to hold both weapons at the same time, because I do intend on storing him in this mode, and I do prefer him with the sword. It's a nice looking sword, got a cutlass look to it, but it's a shame that I can't seem to get him holding dual weapons at the same time. Actually saying that, that's him holding the gun in the same hand, but that doesn't bite in very well either, and that then leads me to think if the sword did and the gun didn't, that the problem isn't just on the hand, but it's also on the hilt of the gun. As you can see, sort of moves, and we're seeing this a bit more now. I actually think now I've experienced it a few times that rather than the pegs in on the palm of the hand that the sword sits into, I prefer the slide-in slots on the palm of the hand. I've seen it on the Make Toys Contact Shot, but only a couple of figures do that. They prefer to peg in, but if there's something out, if there's a misalignment in construction phase, then you get droopage, you get, looseness, and yeah, it holds if you leave it like that, but at the same time, it's not great, because one knock will just knock it straight out of its place. And that's him holding both weapons, but again, the sword is very loose, it's not biting in, I don't want to knock it too much, and again, the gun is loose in that hand. So I seem to have a peg on the gun, and then a peg in the palm of the hand that don't quite match up, but they're interesting, they're on different sides. That's unusual. Another accessory he comes with is another face. Now, it looks more or less the same. The nose is a bit different, if you can see, and the mouth is in the same pose more or less. It's maybe a little bit wider on the lips than what's on the current model. And again, it's not a shouty face versus a placid face, but what this does have is sort of cheek lines on the side of it. I don't know if you'll see, but it's a bit more Rather than that is very rounded, this is a bit more chiselled, perhaps. Squarer jaw, certainly has much more of a chin to it. I don't know, I mean, it's an unusual thing to provide. I don't know if this is much more homage to, say, the Headmaster series, but I don't think what's on him is an awful lot different, and I don't think what's on him is much better or worse, so I'm inclined to leave it as it is. I would have thought if they give you an alternate face to put on, that you would just have a shouty face or a normal face like we tend to see on most products. And I will say, just to change a faceplate, it's fairly straightforward. Get a part separator of some kind. For me, I use a guitar pick. Take that off, and then it plugs in with 2 pegs, and there he is with a more square face on. Actually getting that on, I think I prefer that. It fills out the face a bit more, but I have got this slight gappage between the visor and the faceplate, which I can't seem to do much about, so I'm not sure which one I will keep on in the end, but that's how he looks there, like that. So fairly straight to put that on and off, you haven't got to unscrew anything. And then he transforms up into his little Headmaster, which again is a very nice Headmaster. The silver used on it is very good, the red pops. Articulation is fair, you know, elbow bend, knee bend, possibility of an ankle movement. There's only so much you can do with these things, but I like how he looks. And again, you would have seen my comparisons on the Make Toys contact shot video, getting all of these side by side. They all scale very nicely with the other Headmasters. Okay, on to comparisons. Now, I did a lot of these comparisons recently for contact shot reviews, so some of these you would have seen before. But here he is with the aforementioned Make Toys contact shot, their version of Point Blank. Yep, scaling quite nicely together. Headmaster versus Target Master, of course. Keeping with Make Toys, this is Make Toys Cupola, their version of Chrome Dome. Headmaster and Headmaster this time. Looking quite good again on the scale. Fanstoys Chomp, their version of Skull Cruncher. Now, these two obviously have a lot of similarities. Actually, I do think their eye visor, their eyepiece is much the same. But interestingly, I think Lupus stands that bit taller. It might be how I have Skull Cruncher standing, but I do think he's just that shade taller. And I would have said, if there is any difference at all, that Skull Cruncher would be the bigger of the two bots. But again, I like how it looks. These two side by side do look very good, and of course I'll probably have to get Dracula, their version of Mind White, to complete the trio. And I did do a Galvatron comparison last time, so this time I'm going to do the same mold but in a different paint scheme. Here he is alongside Fanstoys Sovereign, but the toy deco, much more the time traveller version of Sovereign, of Galvatron. So yeah, that's how he scales alongside Make Toys and Fanstoys Masterpiece scale figures. Looking right at home. Okay, let's get him transformed up, shall we? He's hungry like the wolf. And here he is in his beast mode, his wolf mode, and don't worry, he's not that compressed. I've just kind of got him in that position just to get him on the turntable. I found that a very straightforward transformation, and shock horror, the earlier Fanstoys designs were not completely hard work. That hard transformation reputation that they have got and have now kept is much more on their latter releases. This is a much more simplistic design, and whilst I've said before, going from a 4-legged creature into a 2-legged creature, or a 2-legged creature into a 4-legged creature, more or less behaves the same way. It's not absolutely perfect, and it does shift from a very blocky square robot mode into a very thin looking beast mode. Now yes, okay, it's a wolf. Wolves aren't exactly square and bulky, but when you look at the legs, particularly around the rear, you can tell there is a slenderness that's almost disproportional to the body. It's not to say it's a bad thing, and it's certainly not to say it's not screen accurate, but there is very much a slenderness that when you look at the legs in bot mode, there is a complete difference. But do not mistake that. I do like it. The transformation was actually quite fun and straightforward. I used the instructions as well as Alexis's video from Transformers to show some of the tightness and tolerances with this figure, which I'll get into in a minute. That was really useful to follow. And yeah, all in all, it was good fun. Let's get in for a closer look. Now you can see he stands a bit more prouder now he's off the turntable, but when you get him up, he's looks very, very nice. What I didn't really touch on in the initial releases, and again, on the video from Transformers The Show, they go into this much more. This silver, this colour, whatever you want to really call it, appears to be different from the original release. So again, I haven't had the original release, so I can't exactly show you in hand. I'll put up a stock image that I can find. The original release was much more of an off-white, a silver. And personally, I felt that looked fine. On this 2023 reissue, this has a dirtier look to it. This is more of a, I think there's a hint of green here. or almost a brown. It's a muckier colour. And it's not to say it doesn't work, but I can't really understand the need for the change. I would have thought, based on the original character design, that the off-white or silver would have been more appropriate and they would have just reissued with that. It's not to say that this is bad, but maybe I would have just preferred if they kept it as that silver. But that being said, the yellow is still stunning. The green is very, very gorgeous. It's very, very good. Can't really do a lot in terms of poses. I mean, you can get arms out, which is nice for a wider stance on the front. The tightness and the tolerance, which again is an issue, but also a blessing. He stands well. The ankles for beast mode do keep him upright. Whilst it was a bit of an issue for transformation, particularly getting the robot hands that sit underneath flipped underneath here, it was tight, but it's not awful. I do like these things like the grooves on the side of the mouths for the fangs to sit. There's good expression throughout. The design, the paint application is top quality, as you'd expect. And again, I just feel like older Fanstoys models do this. Now, one thing I will say is that you can see here, there are these gaps where these should peg into the side of the waist, and I can't get them to do that. If I pushed in, well, it's going to, the top of this panel would hit the body piece, so I can't get them to tie up. It's not a deal breaker. If anything, it allows for a bit more rotation and freedom. So maybe a bit limited in this mode, but I can't say I didn't enjoy the transformation. It was actually quite fun, and I do like how it looks. Possibly the bot mode is my favourite of the two, but I do like it nevertheless. And of course, we can take his little headmaster, which now sits in here. So to get that open, you more or less tuck him up. I don't know if you can see, there's some very nice detailing of a cockpit in there, but you can flip up the gear stick or steering wheel, whatever you want to call it, and more or less lie him down in there. And he's now secure, which is fine. The only thing I'd say is he doesn't appear, he doesn't sit. Now that's one thing I've noticed, is that you have to set the back legs. The rear knee joints are not maybe as tight as, say, the ankle joints. It stands fine, but if you put him down at a slight angle, he does have a tendency to topple. But that's how he lives with his headmaster inside. Yeah, it's fine, it's good storage. It's just a shame you don't really see him once he's in there. And what is a shame is there is no weapon storage for this. Now, possibly this just falls into the older design category and not thought through, but it would have been good if it could have pegged maybe on the underside, perhaps, just for somewhere for it to go. And unless it does go somewhere that I'm missing, it would have been nice just to store it somewhere, just for more or less keeping it together with the figure. Okay, now on to comparisons. And this one we had to do, really. Here he is alongside Fanstoys Chomp, their version of Skullcruncher in his alt mode. These two look great together. Quite a distance apart from being released. I mean, maybe this design was around a lot longer than when it was actually released, but having them side by side, that looks fantastic. It's a great era of Transformers, and yeah, I'll have to get mine wiped now, won't I? Here he is alongside Studio Series 86 Snarl, just to give you an idea of scale. Different ranges, different sizes, of course. Here he is alongside Geiger Power's Superior, their version of a G1 Grimlock. I mean, barely get these two in the same shot. And here he is alongside G1 Sunstreaker, the Masterpiece version, just to give you an idea of yellow and scale. So what are my final views on Lupus? I'm very, very glad to have him, finally. I was a bit concerned when I took him out of the box, hearing what I've been hearing of, oh, it's not as good as maybe future releases. And again, I cannot compare to the original run of this. I can only compare to what's in my hand as well. And what I didn't show in bot mode, of course, is if you fold down his chest piece, you get his stats, as you always did. Now, they are stuck on, and it says his intelligence is high, his speed and strength is low. I suppose being a wolf, that's fair. But again, I do miss the old gimmick for the G1 toys, is when you put the head in, the stats would appear. I do wish they apply it to the Masterpiece ones. It can't be that hard to do. But going back to the figure itself, I was a bit concerned when I thought, okay, is it not as good as other people are suggesting? Is the tolerances weaker? Are they stronger? And quite honestly, getting it in hand, I was so impressed. The heft is good here. It's overly tolerant, overly stiff in some places, and maybe a bit loose on the hands in some points otherwise. But posability is good, articulation is fair, the paint is beautiful. The transformation is easy, even relatively speaking, and the alt mode is good as well. I do like it. Again, I think very similar to Contact Shot, and it's no surprise that these have come out at the same time, that the older ones are better. They're simpler, I'll say that. They're easier. And as such, there's a lot to be said for taking a design back a few years. Whereas now, a brand new design seems to be overly complicated. As I found out with Warthog, with Powerglide, this is much simpler, bigger, but goes from a chunky bot into a slender wolf with only a few steps. And I did it once with the instructions, I've done it again by memory, and it's absolutely fine. The tolerances are an issue here, sadly. The thumbs, the wrist, there's a lot of real stiffness. Some places need harder ratchets, some places need softer ratchets, like the hips are on a softer ratchet compared to the knee. The knee is a double joint. So yeah, okay, you might need the tolerances for a double joint, but it's, again, you think for weight bearing, the heavier ratchet will be on the hip. But the ankles are fine, shoulders are good. I like it, I really do. Maybe a bit limited in terms of accessories, but what else can you expect from a Weirdwolf? We only really get him for a handful of episodes. I don't know in terms of the paint whether this is better or not. So it is like a dirty, almost swamp green on the chest and the head, maybe. And it would have looked nicer with the original release of a silver. But that's all I can say about it. The yellow is perfect, the green is lovely. Even the red, that mixture of a vibrant red and a soft red on the head is gorgeous. I'm just really pleased to have it in my collection. But again, as I say, it's not a £400 figure. It's not. I got this for, well, a fair price is a good price that Primetime Toys did for me. And of course, it's down to the unit rate of the figure. But you look elsewhere, I still think this is a tad overpriced for what it is. But that's on Fanstoys. That's what they're choosing to sell it, from wholesale to retail price. I am really pleased that I've got it. I wish it had maybe a couple of modern day advancements with the re-release. Maybe there's a few things they could have adjusted since. Now, what I did notice a few months ago, quite a few months ago, that there are some websites out there, not extending to Primetime Toys, that there is a not Lupus version. There's a knockoff version of this coming out. So I kept an eye on it and it didn't go anywhere, and actually some listings have been taken down now. I wonder what that was all about. Did someone secure some surplus stock again? Maybe some defects? We're getting into the realms of knockoff of a third party, fourth party, KO, whatever you want to call it. How they come about, I don't know. But it was going to be, led to believe, considerably cheaper than this, so it made me think of it. But really getting this in hand, and for what I paid for it, not up to that £400 price tag, I'm very pleased with it. I love how it looks. It sits there nicely in my Rebirth collection now. And even though it's an older mould, it's got a lovely amount of simplicity to it. The tolerances are a shame, and I do think that's something they could have worked on under the re-release of it. If you're going to slap the 2023 reissue against it, I would fix some known issues with it. As much as you can, anyway. If it's tolerance issues, that can be tidied up. But the paint is immaculate, it hasn't decayed. If this is one that's been in storage, I would guess this has been painted afresh, designed afresh, using an old design. They could have tightened up or loosened some tolerance issues. I think it's a shame with the palms, the wrists not holding the weapons, with some droopage. And that will affect some of the posing, but then the posing of the figure itself, such as ankle tension and stability, is overall very good. I'm very pleased I've got it. I just can't stop looking at it. It's a great figure. Fanstoys, again, do very pretty figures. Very pleased to have this in my collection. And based on this, I give this figure 4 Rodimus Star Badges, but it's only just a 4. It is a shame for the tolerances of them. The fact that it actually comes into play more than you'd like. There's too loose a grip, or there's no grip at all for the hands, so holding weapons for posing and photography is tricky. The tolerances for transformations, some parts can be awkward, so you're encountering the tolerances in a few locations, and it's enough to be annoying. That's probably the only thing I'd say about it. Okay, maybe it's a little bit limited on it. I'm giving it 4 stars because I think it looks so good, and it holds up today as a very good mould, despite being a good 6 years old, more or less. So it could have been 3.5 easily, but I went with 4 because it is a good figure. It's not worth some of the crazy secondary market prices, but it's a very good one to have in your collection if you're on your way to making a rebirth collection and it doesn't look like this knockoff Fanstoys version is coming. Then try and source this. It is a recommendation from me, and it's certainly the only masterpiece Weirdwolf on the market. But there we go. I just want to say again a huge thank you to Primetime Toys. Do go and check them out in a link in the description below. But thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share and hit that subscribe button, because I will see you on the next one.